Wewelsburg Castle still stands quietly in Germany, but its past is far from silent. Heinrich Himmler turned it into something far beyond a castle, changing every room to fit his strange vision for the Schutzstaffel. Inside those walls, ideas and plans took form that still leave people uneasy today. But what secret purpose drove Himmler to this remote fortress? And what hidden chamber inside could change everything we thought we knew? The castle. He picked Wewelsburg Castle sits on a steep hill above the village of Wewelsburg. The village is part of the district of Büren in the Paderborn region of North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. The building dates to the early 17th century and has 3 round towers joined by thick stone walls. One tower stands taller than the others and commands the view. That tower became the center of Heinrich Himmler's plan for the Schutzstaffel. Heinrich Himmler held the title Reichsführer of the Schutzstaffel. He visited the castle in the early 1930s. Himmler chose Wewelsburg as a place the Schutzstaffel could use for education and display. The local council and province negotiated with Himmler. Records show a lease signed in 1934 that allowed the Schutzstaffel long-term use. The cost recorded for the lease was largely symbolic. Officials accepted the arrangement to satisfy political pressure and to secure investment in the site. Hermann Bartels worked as an architect on the Wewelsburg plans. Manfred von Knobelsdorff served as the castle superintendent after the Schutzstaffel took control. On the 22nd of September 1934, Heinrich Himmler led a formal event to mark the new status of the site. The Schutzstaffel renamed the property Schutzstaffel Schulhaus Wewelsburg in official papers. The name signaled the site would host classes and events for select officers from the Schutzstaffel leadership. The Schutzstaffel altered rooms and added new spaces. The North Tower received the largest program of work. Builders lowered the central floor of the round hall to create a deep circular space. Excavators cut into the bedrock and poured concrete to form a new base. A system of columns and a patterned tile floor were installed inside the round hall. Masons also prepared a vault space underground. Construction details referred to a central pipe and mounting points that could support a fixed light or torch installation. Design sketches and models in the archives show plans for ceremonial use by senior officers. The hall was intended for gatherings of high rank. Officials prepared lists of seating and of places for displayed objects. Surrounding rooms were arranged for study, for storage of papers, and for meetings. The Schutzstaffel also built additional service spaces around the castle. Stone and concrete work continued in stages into the early 40s. Materials and labor came from local sources at first. The scale of the project increased as the Schutzstaffel expanded its personnel. Records show that the program required specialized stone cutting and reinforced concrete. Transport lists record deliveries of sand, gravel, and steel. Those lists match later changes seen in the tower walls and in the new foundations. People noticed that the scope of the work and regional trades provided many services. Stonemasons, carpenters, and scaffolders came from nearby towns such as Büren and Paderborn. Contracts record payments for timber, windows, iron fittings, roof tiles, and furnace parts. Electric wiring and heating systems were installed, so rooms would be usable in winter. The Schutzstaffel planned a program of lectures at the site. Visiting lecturers from research units gave talks on archaeology, language, and regional history. Administrators ordered shelving, display cases, and secure storage for papers. Supply invoices and contractor letters survive in regional archives and state collections. These records include signatures of officials and contractor stamps. By the late 30s, the project needed a larger workforce. A small labor camp appeared near the castle. That site later became a formal concentration camp named Niederhagen. Prison labor moved heavy blocks and mixed concrete for the Wewelsburg works. Administrative papers link specific supply orders to work phases on the tower. The labor arrangements and supply movements shaped the speed of construction. Architects and artists designed the castle interior. Design officers proposed decorative panels, painted banners, and carved elements to fill the halls. Some officers sought motifs that referenced national prehistory and regional craft traditions. Designers recorded options in drawings, and the archive holds correspondence that names suppliers and artists. Many of those names appear in inventories preserved after the war. Work on the North Tower remained incomplete when wartime priorities shifted. Concrete surfaces remained exposed in places, and planned fixtures never reached final installation. Post-war investigators noted that rebar, wooden formwork marks, and unfinished plaster indicate work stopped in haste. Those building traces help date stages of construction and show which tasks received priority. Workers and Schutzstaffel administrators kept administrative records of costs, contracts, and permissions. Lease papers, contractor information, and payment lists survive in regional archives. Those documents make clear who signed approvals and who oversaw payments. The material record explains the formal side of the project as much as the stonework does. Pictures taken during that time show staged interior arrangements and group photos of officers on the castle steps. The visual record supports the written files and helps identify specific rooms. After 1945, Allied teams and historians cataloged rooms and recovered documents. Their reports form the first modern descriptions of the Schutzstaffel program at Wewelsburg. The result was a complex site with practical offices, storage, rooms, and a specially shaped tower hall intended for senior meetings. The combination of heavy stonework, planned decorative elements, and institutional papers makes it clear that Wewelsburg was a long-term project for Heinrich Himmler and his administrative staff. Archive records and surviving structures together tell the story of what the Schutzstaffel built and who managed the work at the castle. But the deeper historians dug, the clearer it became. These weren't just ordinary rooms. What secret purpose did they truly serve? What they put inside? When the Schutzstaffel took over Wewelsburg, they filled rooms with objects and papers meant to support their work. The main agency that supplied many pieces was the uneasy. The uneasy organized field trips and museum transfers for objects thought to represent older European cultures. Wolfram Sievers acted as Reich business chief for the uneasy. He managed files, contracts, and shipments that moved material to the castle. The lists kept at the castle show a wide mix of material. Prehistoric stone tools and axes stood beside pottery fragments labeled as Roman or early medieval. Ethnographic objects from workshops were set in cases next to painted panels commissioned for the Schutzstaffel. The contrast was obvious. The castle combined old items with new works made to match the group's taste. Artists and designers supplied modern pieces. Karl Diebitsch produced ornament designs and banners. Wolfgang Willrich painted portraits and figure studies favored by leaders. Hans Lobeck made carved memorial pieces and small sculptures. These modern works shared display space with older artifacts. The choice of these artists came from offices in Berlin that handled cultural projects for the Schutzstaffel. Correspondence in the files names the artists and lists the items sent to Wewelsburg. The uneasy kept separate expedition files. These files included field information, dated photos, measured sketches, and catalog cards. Archaeologists and field researchers recorded where an object was collected, what layer of soil held it, and which staff member recorded the work. Some entries show objects collected inside Germany. Other records show items moved from museums or bought from dealers in occupied regions. Transfer documents and invoices indicate that some acquisitions came through purchases. Wartime paperwork sometimes shows that museum loans became permanent transfers by administrative order. The castle displays included larger items such as carved stone fragments and a few metal objects. Small personal items like bronze, brooches, and beads appeared in glass cases. Pottery sherds were arranged on cloth with small labels that gave a short description and a transfer date. Some labels carried a round stamp and a handwritten signature from a curator who approved the movement. Not every object carried a long card. Many pieces had short entries that only recorded material, origin, and the date of arrival at the castle. Architectural models and building sketches occupied another room. These models showed the North Tower plans, the lowered central floor, and the vault beneath the hall. Planners kept blueprints, cost lists, and material orders on shelves near the models. Those papers show how builders planned the tower and where display cases would sit. Work orders list dates for tile laying, column installation, and concrete pouring. The paper trail provides links between the castle structure and the objects displayed inside. Heinrich Himmler kept notebooks and a small numbered pocket calendar. The calendar lists meetings, visits, and short notes about shipments. It mentions boxes arriving with crates marked for the North Tower. Administrators kept inventory books that numbered the cases and assigned a custodian for each set of objects. The inventory pages include the name of the person who signed for an item when it arrived. That record-keeping helped later staff locate items placed in storage or moved to other sites. Photos taken by staff during the 1930s show staged arrangements in display rooms. Shelves hold rows of pottery. Wall panels present painted banners. Officers sat in formal poses near piles of crates. These images help today's researchers match written inventory entries to the actual objects. In several cases, the pictures provide the only visual record for items that were later left in the castle or could not be located after the war. The mixture of materials in the castle surprised later historians because it mixed fieldwork material with commissioned art. The arrangement suggested a deliberate message. Display cases grouped prehistoric tools with paintings that echoed similar visual themes. This pairing shows how the organization blended scholarly language with public display. Curators who cataloged the objects after the war recorded the conditions of the items. Metal items displayed signs of corrosion. Pottery carried chips and old repairs. Paper lists and maps showed water damage on their edges. Conservators made treatment information and recommended storage improvements. When items could not be shown for safety reasons, museum staff produced copies or replicas. The Christ Museum later displayed replicas where originals required long-term conservation. Transport records list crates moved by truck and by train. Loading lists show where items left the castle and where they went for storage. Some pieces moved to regional archives, others to national museums for safekeeping. The paperwork includes the names of the transport officers and the dates of departure. Those records helped match objects photographed at Wewelsburg to items later held in safe storage. There were also many small administrative objects. Guest lists for meetings in the Obergruppenführersaal still survive. Program leaflets show who spoke on what date. Nameplates and seating plans indicate which officers attended particular sessions. These ephemera give a picture of the administrative life that surrounded the displays and the lectures. Books and pamphlets used in coursework filled shelves in libraries. Titles on German prehistory, language history, and folk customs appear in the reading lists. Lecture files and syllabi show class topics and invited lecturers. The reading lists include authors known to the period and show which subjects instructors emphasized. Some records show requests to other museums for loans or permanent transfers. Those request letters name the museum official and list the object types requested. The letters include promised compensation or exchange offers. Other files show receipts for purchases from private dealers. Wartime paperwork sometimes lists the place of origin as occupied territories, a detail that later required legal review after the war. Conservation files from the post-war period record which items required urgent treatment. Metal cleaning, consolidation of ceramic fragments, and insect treatment for paper files appear on treatment lists. The conservators who worked in the immediate years after the war left handwritten reports that record the steps taken. Those reports include the names of the conservators and dates for the work. Crate labels and packing lists often carried the same inventory numbers used in the castle books. Museum staff used the numbers to reunite sets of objects that had been separated during transport. Where handwriting matched, archivists could confirm that a specific box came from the North Tower storage area. The matching method allowed researchers to rebuild display sets where possible. The records also show how the organization prepared for visitors. Lists of objects scheduled for display give dates and room numbers. Some lists show arrangements for a specific guest, with items selected to be shown on that date. That level of planning suggests the display was a deliberate part of the program at the castle. After 1945, many items left Wewelsburg and entered institutional care. Inventory pages moved to regional archives. Museum staff produced consolidated catalogs that list objects, their material, and their movement after the war. Those consolidated lists form the modern base used by historians when they study the castle collections. Present-day curators, archivists, and historians work together to verify provenance details, reconcile lists, and prepare items for public display and legal review. But behind those neatly cataloged records lies a darker story, one built not on scholarship, but on suffering. What did it truly cost to create Wewelsburg's haunting legacy? How it was made and what it cost? The work at Wewelsburg required many hands and continuous supplies. Stone had to be cut, concrete mixed, timber carried, and roofs rebuilt. At first, masons and builders did the jobs. As the project grew, the Schutzstaffel brought in more workers. A labor camp appeared near the slopes. That camp later became the Niederhagen concentration camp. Niederhagen is linked directly to the castle work. Prisoners moved heavy blocks from local quarries up narrow paths. They loaded wagons, dragged timbers, and mixed mortar in open pits. Records kept by the offices show groups tasked with stone cutting, concrete work, and road repairs. Those lists name dates, delivery points, and the units assigned to each task. The camp began tied to Sachsenhausen and later operated independently for a period between 1941 and 1943. At its height, historians estimate thousands were imprisoned there. Transport lists and registry pages record arrivals from France, Poland, the Soviet Union, Belgium, and Czechoslovakia. The camp also held local political prisoners, Roma and Sinti. Housing consisted of wooden barracks with little insulation. Food rations were small. Diseases spread easily in crowded quarters. Many prisoners suffered from frost in the winter months. Guard files and survivor testimonies describe long work shifts, worn tools, and rough treatment by guards. Medical records show common complaints of exhaustion, hunger, and untreated wounds. A crematorium was operated by 1942. Municipal registers and camp lists record more than 1,000 deaths linked to the site. Causes include illness, exposure, and violence. Those losses form part of the documented record tied to the castle project. Prisoners built roads to move material up the hill. They prepared foundations, mixed concrete for the tower vault, and installed drainage systems. Craftspeople from nearby towns supervised specialist tasks, while prisoners did most heavy work. Supply lists show orders for lime, cement, sand, steel bars, and boiler parts. The lists match building stages visible in the surviving structures. Transport records show materials arriving by truck from Paderborn and by rail to nearby stations. Records list dates and supplier names. Those entries match the dates recorded in castle books, letting researchers connect deliveries to specific construction tasks. Administrative papers name site managers, architects, and logistics officers. Signatures from regional officials confirm permissions for quarrying and for road use. Payment receipts list wages and material costs. Some entries record civilian contractors, while other entries record allowances for camp work crews. Survivor statements collected after the war describe daily routines. Testimony files list hours worked, tools issued, and penalties for failing orders. Those memories often list stairways and paths used to move blocks. Archaeological surveys later located foundation remains at quarries and observed paths that match the descriptions. Those traces on the landscape confirm elements in the testimony. After the war, investigators entered Wewelsburg to record structures and to secure documents. Allied teams and historians took pictures of the rooms, measured walls, and took building notes. They observed partially finished concrete surfaces and exposed rebar where work had stopped. Their reports include lists of rooms and notations about where documents were stored. Those records gave later researchers a clear start. Court documents and post-war trials recorded the administrative side of the project. Officials involved in the research organization faced justice after the war. Trials reviewed files that showed who ordered expeditions, who approved object transfers, and who arranged funding. Those legal inquiries produced transcripts and statements that now assist researchers. In the decades after 1945, museums and archives took custody of documents and many material pieces. The Kreismuseum Wewelsburg cataloged items moved from the North Tower and from storage rooms. Staff recorded objects, noted their condition, and made lists of transport movements. That catalog work included matching crate numbers to inventory pages among the castle papers. Archaeologists and surveyors found remains of camp foundations. They located fragments of barrack walls and traces of work yards. Conservation studies documented ash layers near the crematorium site and fragments of clothing in excavations. These material traces link the camp to the castle operations. Invoices list payments for timber, metal fittings, roofs, heating boilers, and electrical equipment. Transport bills show fees for trucks and for railway freight. While the symbolic lease cost between local authorities and the Schutzstaffel was low, actual building expenses rose through contractor payments and materials. Administrators changed budgets as wartime pressure shifted priorities. Researchers estimate that at its peak, around 3,900 prisoners were held at Niederhagen. Registers and camp lists compiled after the war include many names. Signatures appear on building orders. Manfred von Knobelsdorff signed some site papers. Architect Hermann Bartels approved parts of the tower plans. Logistics officers in Paderborn sent supply lists that administrators filed. After 1945, memorial projects recorded grave sites and created panels naming victims. Archivists now cross-check camp lists, transport logs, and construction receipts. They match crate numbers to inventory pages and payroll entries. Handwriting and stamps help confirm which box or document belongs to which room. Conservators digitize fragile pages and make copies for public access and online study for researchers. Preservation of the record continues. Archivists keep fragile paper safe. Conservators treat metal and ceramic objects so they do not decay. Regional historians map who worked where and when. Museums display building plans, transport lists, and camp registries. The combined evidence gives a clear account of what went into the Wewelsburg project and the human cost. Visitors who walk on the hill today see solid stone, the altered tower, and paths that once carried heavy loads. Museum panels present transport lists, payment records, and the names recorded in camp registries. Those displays connect the physical site to the workforce that built it and the records that document the labor. Every brick of Wewelsburg still holds a trace of what once happened there. The walls, the halls, and the designs remind us how power can twist even the simplest places into something dark. What was built there still draws attention today, not for glory, but for warning. History does not fade, it waits. If you learned something new, give this video a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe for more stories like this.